I've been playing Frostpunk 2 nonstop for several days now, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the game and show you actual gameplay. It's a very complex game, very rewarding as well, but I'll have a really big how to play guide up for it later today on my channel. Make sure you check that out if you're interested. But for now, let's talk about what the game actually is. So what even is Frostpunk 2? You might think of it as a city builder, but I'm here to tell you that's not quite true. While it definitely has city building components, it's a unique real-time blend of politics, resource management, grand strategy, 4X style strategy, and yes, of course, some city building elements. The goal of the game is to expand New London and survive against a brutal and an eternal post-apocalyptic winter, but you're not placing down individual structures. You're operating on a large scale, especially compared to the original Frostpunk. This is not the kind of game where you spend a lot of time clicking on individual people that live in your city, looking at their individual lists of needs and desires. It's not that kind of game. You're operating at a macro scale. So you're focusing on trying to meet the ever-changing and supremely demanding resources of your people, while also doing the same and managing the relationships with factions and communities. You're passing new laws, you're researching new tech, and generally, you're just trying to expand New London. You're trying to grow it, whether it's physically expanding it across the Frostland or whether it's expanding your population and caring for them. You're constantly trying to be bigger and better. I think thematically, Frostpunk 2 makes a lot of sense because at the end of the first game, not really a spoiler, but you survive, right? Humanity goes on, continues living. What do? You want to grow, you want to expand. So I think that fits really well with the general idea of Frostpunk 2, and I love that 11-bit studios are not just making more of the same game. They're trying to do something different, they're trying to do something unique. It's not just like playing the greatest hits over and over again. And I know for some people, they might want just Frostpunk 1 again, but that's not what Frostpunk 2 is. So let's talk about the gameplay. The core gameplay loop of Frostpunk 2 has you breaking through the ice and frost in the game world so that you can extract resources to keep your people warm and relatively happy. You're doing this by constructing different districts, filling them with buildings that can give special bonuses or features, and by very carefully maintaining relationships with factions that form in your city. While the first game's big enemy was the cold, this game's enemy is human nature and its darkness or its pitfalls. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the political aspect of this game is just as important as the resource management aspect of it, if not more so. Of course, resource management is still a crucial aspect of the game, but you really have to manage trust and support levels with the different political factions in the game because they all want different things and they can all dramatically alter your playthrough. This means that you're constantly evaluating and reevaluating which laws you should pass, which structures you should build, and how you should or shouldn't expand your city. There's tons of politics in Frostpunk 2, tons of it. You're constantly wheeling and dealing through different negotiations, and you'll find that oftentimes in order to do something that you want to do, you'll need to kind of coerce or negotiate with other factions. So let's say you want to pass one law. In order to pass that one law, another faction might ask you to pass a different law, or they might ask you to promise to research a specific building or even build a specific structure. So you can see how as more factions appear as you play, this can get very complicated very quickly because you can never do something that pleases everyone, or if you can, it's very rare. Now, to the game's credit, it's pretty straightforward in telling you how you can increase or decrease your standing with a faction, but you really have to be careful because things can escalate to the point of civil war. So yeah, politics is a huge factor in Frostpunk 2. It's way more of a political simulator than you might have expected if you were going into this thinking it's just more Frostpunk 1. This is the kind of game where you always need a plan for everything, and you always need a backup plan in case things change because they will change. So in the top right of the screen, you have the long-term weather forecast, and this really helps you generally plan out what you're going to be doing because you're going to see important information up there. Different weather can come and go. You can have whiteouts, you can have warmer weather, you can have much colder weather. It all influences what your people want from you. And so you always want to keep an eye out in the top right, make sure you know what's going on. You always want to keep an eye out for your factions and your standing with them. And you always want to think about what's best now and what's best for the future, because in this game, sometimes you might build something that 3 hours later, you're going to be like, actually, I should get rid of that because it's actually hurting me right now. So it all feels very dynamic. It all feels like it's constantly evolving. and there's so many systems at play. They generally come together in really cool ways, and I'll talk more about those systems in the tutorial video I mentioned before. I think they've nailed it in terms of keeping the game super complex or feeling strategic or feeling like it has a lot of depth, but while also making it easy for you to jump into it and, make mistakes, have fun with it, learn with it. It's not as difficult as you might think. It's a very complex game, but it's not difficult in the sense of you don't know what you should be doing, you don't know, how to do something. The game is constantly explaining it to you. But what's complex is you making the right decisions at the right time. I really enjoy all these different systems in Frostpunk 2 and how they interact with one another, but there was a point in the story near the end where some of it doesn't really come together in a way that you might like or you might want. We'll get to that in a little bit, and of course, no spoilers here. Alright, so let's talk about graphics and performance. Now, I don't know how much it shines through the, YouTube quality, but Frostpunk 2 is beautiful. I never thought that white snow and ice could be so engaging to look at. The landscapes are awesome. The world is awesome. The UI is awesome. The game even uses color to evoke certain moods and feelings, which is really great. Initially, I wasn't so sure about the bright white UI because I generally keep my brightness settings on lowest and, I'm trying to not burn my eyes out, but I didn't find it difficult on the eyes at all. And it really feeds into the overall experience, especially, no spoilers, but the UI will change a little bit as you play the game to kind of evoke certain moods and certain feelings. It's really cool that way. With that said, there are some graphical and performance quirks that I found in my playthrough. So DLSS on my machine was super blurry and lacking frame generation, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be getting addressed and it might be already patched by the time you see this. I ended up using a different upscaling method with frame gen, which wasn't perfect, but it did increase my frame rate quite a bit. And based on my individual experience, this is definitely the kind of game where you're going to want like a super duper computer if you're planning on maxing this out on ultra high, 4K, that kind of thing. I have a pretty modern PC that's not exactly top of the line anymore. It does have an EVGA RTX 3080 in it, and the performance definitely took a noticeable hit as I greatly expanded my city as it got super big. It's kind of what happens in a lot of these games, at least like the newer ones when they're coming out with the current technology. It wasn't unplayable or anything, but the game definitely suffered from having just a lot of stuff happening on screen. I played on all high settings, so like I said, if you're looking to max this out on Ultra 4K 60 FPS, you'll definitely need a beefy machine. Sometimes the game can chug a little bit when you're switching between your city and an outpost, but it's never too long and it's never to the point of being annoying. It's like a split second maybe. Also, as you go deeper into your save, you can expect saving to take longer and longer. Sometimes it can take a really long time, which was a little bit surprising. And by the way, be sure to save often. I actually had an autosave completely crash the game and not end up saving, so I lost a bunch of progress there. It only happened once, and it wasn't ultimately a big deal. But you know how PC gaming is, right? Your mileage may vary depending on your machine, that kind of thing. So just be sure to save often. Overall, I would say definitely check out the recommended specs carefully. I personally would have taken worse graphics if it meant better performance, but a lot of people aren't as sensitive to upscaling or slight performance hitches or changes as I am, and my friends even roast me for it. So I fully acknowledge I'm extra sensitive to this stuff. If you're watching this and everything looks fine to you, that's totally fine. That's totally normal. Don't worry about it, as long as you meet or exceed the recommended specs. Now then, remember earlier in the video I mentioned towards the end of the story, the gameplay systems kind of maybe didn't line up the way that you want them to? Well, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I can tell you in the final parts of the story, certain events happen that feel like they're at odds with what you've been doing, with your gameplay, with your freedom. And it's really not a deal breaker, but it is important to call out, I think, because this game has so much freedom and is so open-ended. So naturally, when you're trying to conclude a story, it's going to have to maybe like close up in a way that maybe you didn't anticipate, or maybe that clashes with what you've been doing with your gameplay. So I'm really glad that this game has a story mode. It gives you wonderful gameplay continuity through like 95% of it, and it just helps things feel more unique than they already are. But in my specific playthrough with how I played, the kind of ending parts of the game were a little bit at odds with the politics and political systems that I had in place. So, You might not run into this depending on how you play the game, but I think it's worth calling out just so you kind of expect that or know about that going in. And generally though, the replayability factor here I think is great. You've got the branching story mode, which depending on what difficulty you play on, that's an easy 10 to 15 hours there. Obviously depends on player skill as well. You've also got a mode where you can just, pick a map and play. It's called Utopia Builder, I think, off the top of my head. You can actually customize the experience in this mode, so you can tweak different difficulty parameters, you can tweak which factions show up, you can tweak your goals, you can tweak resources, all those great things that you'd want to tweak. And this game also has mod support, which Frostpunk fans have wanted for a super long time. It sounds really promising. They've already showed off dinosaurs as an example, which is amazing. But of course, given that I'm recording this before launch, there are no mods available. Regardless, I'm super excited because I think mod support for something like Frostpunk is going to be amazing and keep the game feeling fresh and fun for years to come. You just know the community is going to make some insane stuff as long as the mod tools are great. So I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, so the most important question, in my opinion, is Frostpunk 2 fun? Well, if you're coming at it from the perspective of you just want a traditional city builder, probably this is not the game for you. But if you're looking for a unique take on city building or survival or different kinds of strategy subgenres like grand strategy or 4X, I think you'll probably really enjoy this game. I've had lots of fun with it so far, and I definitely see myself putting in dozens of more hours. It's just such a unique experience that the minor shortcomings it has don't really detract from it in any major way. The core gameplay is fantastic, and I can't wait to see how they build on it in future expansions or DLC, or, just with the mods that I mentioned before. In my experience, the game is relatively bug-free. Apart from that one crash, I had some very minor UI issues that I could resolve just by right-clicking. And overall, I thought the UI was really handy. It feeds you so much information all the time. I think maybe there could be some extra clarity around the laws and the tech tree just to help you plan better. But also I might just be stupid. I don't know. I definitely made some really, really crazy mistakes in the story just by not paying as much attention as I should have. Several times I transported my people to the wrong location. Several times I would put a law into effect only to repeal it because I didn't realize what I was doing. It's a lot to learn at once, okay? But also I might just be stupid. But yeah, I had a great time with Frostpunk 2 and I can't wait to play more. And if I had to review this game, I'd give it 4 out of 5 stars or 8 out of 10 with no half scoring. So really, really fun game. And I think the future is really bright for Frostpunk 2. And in general, I just can't wait to see what 11-Bit Studios does next with it, or the franchise, or even their other games. I can't wait to see what they get up to. By the way, the game recommends you start on the first difficulty because it is indeed complex and it can feel punishing if you don't know what you're doing, but I would challenge that a little bit. Unless this is your first sort of strategy or city builder adjacent game, or maybe you were just not super skilled at those games, yeah, for sure, go with that first difficulty. But otherwise, I would say you can start on the officer difficulty, which will just give you a bit more of a challenging experience, but it's also going to be more rewarding and more engaging. And of course, like I mentioned before, I'll have that really big tutorial up later today to teach you how to play Frostpunk 2. And you might fail a couple times in the campaign, but honestly, that's part of the fun, that's part of the process. Failing in Frostpunk 2 it feels like they designed that as part of the game. It's fun. You're not really going to be set that much back if you fail. All right, so those are my thoughts on Frostpunk 2. Hopefully I gave you a good overview of what the game is all about. Now you can feel more informed about whether you want to play it or not. But I want to hear from you. What do you think about Frostpunk 2? Is there something you agree or disagree with, especially from the video? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the game and whether you're excited for it, or maybe you've already played it. I just want to hear your thoughts. I want to know what you think about Frostpunk 2. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more Frostpunk content. Peace out. Why did I say it like that? That was horrible. I shouldn't do that.